Welcome back to Ursa Sparx, where we illuminate the personalities shaping STEM. Today's guest is Professor Mason Peck, Aerospace Engineering Professor at Cornell and the former CTO at NASA. Professor Peck's career spans across academia, public service, and pioneering work in space systems and small-scale satellites. In today's episode, we'll explore his journey through his career, his thoughts on the future of space and research, and the implications both of these have had and continue to have on the upcoming generations. If you're interested in leadership, space, or the deeper questions behind new technology and how it comes about, today's episode is for you. All right, everyone, I'm joined here by Professor Peck from Cornell University. It's great to have you here, Professor. Happy to have you on the podcast today. And then if you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Thanks, Rushil. Great to be here. My name is Mason Peck. I'm a professor at Cornell University. I'm formerly the professor of astronautics, the Stephen Fujikawa Professor of Astronautics. He donated some money to the university, and that partially funds my position here. I've been at Cornell for over 20 years. For a while, I was NASA's Chief Technologist, which is a position where you work on technology at the highest level of the agency. It was a lot of fun, great honor. We can maybe talk about that a little bit. Yeah. I have a background in English literature, also engineering, so anything beginning with ENG, I got it covered, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Peck. So, as we get started in this, we kind of want to go back to your roots and see what really got you into STEM in the first place. And in your case, not just STEM, English as well, because you've majored in English as an undergraduate and a graduate student. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your childhood, what drew you to science, STEM, and English?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I suppose there's an intersection in science fiction, right? And there's a lot of young people who really are into science fiction or fantasy or other kind of forms of escapism, I guess. I guess maybe I never really outgrew that. So I'm interested in things that are inventive and novel and creative. To me, that is true for literature. It's writing a book or a story, creating art in general is a creative act. And I think that it's also true of engineering. When we create things, when we design them, we bring them into existence in a way that's, again, very much a creative act. So I guess I get a kick out of that sort of thing. I've always enjoyed that sort of activity, whether as a kid, doodling or building Legos, or as an adult, I guess professionally, I like the idea of designing and building spacecraft. So to me, they kind of go together a little bit. I hope that makes sense.
No, definitely. And I completely echo the Lego part. I have to set myself a monthly budget now because my mom's been checking my bills.
Okay.
So building off of that, was there a specific moment you could cite, maybe a book, a movie you saw, given the science fiction you mentioned, that kind of spoke to you or told you that this is what I want to do in the future?
I've thought about that before because it's tempting just to sort of pull out the huge pop culture events that shaped my 10-year-old awareness. So for me, that would be Star Wars, or even before that, or around the same time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These were huge blockbuster science fiction movies at the time in the late 70s. And I suppose that had an effect on me, but I'm not sure it actually drove exactly the career path. If you think about both of those, they're not really, if you know those movies, not really about the technology so much. And there's some cool technological things. This notion that a lightsaber could exist, right? That's just an interesting idea that I guess you got to credit George Lucas for coming up with something really innovative. And again, that innovation, I guess I appreciate that. But no, I think that my dad was an author, is an author.
Oh, wow.
He wrote some science fiction. And he had a huge collection of science fiction. Most of it was not great, but some was really good. And so I just had the opportunity, living in my house, to just look through those books, and I got exposed to that as a young person. I suppose if I had been exposed to other things, maybe that's what I would have found an affinity for. So I guess that's one of the pathways to science or STEM, for me at least, is encountering it in a setting where it's accessible. So fiction or movies or art, that makes it accessible to people. There's kind of a low barrier to entry for appreciating art and literature. Not to say that it's not sophisticated or not subtle or nuanced, but I think something else like, let's say, straight up physics
Yeah.
or the discipline of engineering, which you know well, those can be inaccessible to the casual observer. It takes a lot of education and background to get to the point where you can sort of get the engineering side of problems. So I think for most people, at least, and it's true for me, you know, getting into STEM was easy if it's, you know, kind of given to you in a form that's, you know, accessible. So I guess that makes a difference for a lot of people. I think you know, when we're teaching things at Cornell or even at a K through 12 level, it's important not to create this barrier between the learner and the educator, which makes it seem like, you know, the educator is this fount of all amazing knowledge and the learner is just some poor supplicant hoping for a few scraps of information. It should be a form of engagement, and I think that art is engaging. And so that's one way in which I think we can get folks on the same page. It's also one reason why in the course I'm teaching right now, Introduction to Spaceflight Mechanics, we use some science fiction to get ideas across. Not a lot, less than I used to, honestly, but it is part of the story.
Definitely, and I appreciate you going into detail with that, Professor Peck. And kind of just a quick little bridge into what we're going to speak about next. Is there anything, before we move on, that you'd like to tell us that most people may not know about you, either as an educator, as a scientist, an engineer, or just as a person in general?
Yeah, well, you've exposed the key secret, which is I have this English background. That's definitely true. Let's see. You know, for whatever reason, when I was younger in college, I thought it would be a good idea to study languages. And I'm still very interested in that topic, linguistics, and also languages in general. So I do know some languages, none as well as I know English, but I know some Mandarin Chinese, some Japanese, Russian, French. And Spanish I have had to learn because my wife's family speaks Spanish, and so if I don't know, then they're all talking about me. They'll still talk about me, but now I understand what they're saying, and that's kind of key. So languages, I guess.
That's amazing. So kind of moving on from early life, more delving into your career, your research you've done, the work you've done. Could we speak a little bit to your NASA experience? You were the CTO at NASA. What responsibilities did that bring? Could you kind of walk us through your job really there?
Sure. I think one of the misunderstandings people have about that job, whether you call it Chief Technologist or CTO, comes from the fact that a lot of companies these days are very information technologies focused. So depending on who you talk to, if you talk about technology, they think you mean computers. I've had students who say, I want to go into technology. I go, oh, great, what kind? Well, you know, technology, computers. Well, there's plenty of technologies out there. For NASA, the technology portfolio includes everything. It's propulsion and thermal and structures and communication subsystems and robotics and just like a huge range of technologies. So the CTO or the Chief Technologist of NASA kind of has the responsibility for strategic direction for that portfolio of technology investments. If you like, if I were a money manager, a hedge fund manager, I would be responsible for a portfolio of money, of stocks and bonds and whatever else is in those portfolios. For NASA, investing in that future is essential because it's only by staying at the cutting edge that NASA has a hope of achieving the audacious goals that we think of when we think of NASA. We think of Apollo, right? And that's sending humans to the moon 50 years ago. It's astonishing that was possible at that time. And it took everything we could to make that happen. And it's true even today. There's some really extraordinary missions like the James Webb Space Telescope, right? 2 decades in the making, depending how you count it. A lot of money, $12 billion. But the technology is central to that. So as the Chief Technologist, one of my responsibilities was being the chief advocate for technologies at the agency. And that's important because in something as large and complex as NASA, a lot of folks appropriately focus on today's missions, right? We got to launch the space shuttle tomorrow. I don't have time to think about, you know, solar sails for 20 years from now. Or, you know, we are worried about the budget, therefore we really have to focus on the near term to make Congress happy. So my voice was one that, when I was successful, made the point that we have to invest in the future or we don't have one. And so, in fact, when I got to NASA's technology cupboard was bare. There'd been years of at least underinvestment, maybe no investment in next generation stuff. So there are now programs at NASA, some are, I guess, thanks to me and also my predecessors and the folks who came after me, that try to direct some funding at least toward that future. So it's a cool job. If there were aliens kept in a base somewhere, I would know where those things were. I'm not saying I know that. But that's the level that I ended up working at, which is kind of astonishing because honestly, who am I, right? I'm some guy, and I got very lucky that the previous chief technologist, who by the way was the first in over a decade, Robert Braun, he nominated me for this position, and I seem to have said something positive in the interview process. It seemed to work out okay. So I felt very lucky that I had that, and I tried not to waste a second of my time there. I feel very passionately about human space exploration, about space science, about commercial space. All of these things are worth doing. And just those three things I stated are among the many high-level objectives that an organization like NASA could have, or as a nation that we could have. To get it right, though, it requires this very delicate balance among all the stakeholders. So I ended up talking to Congress, who in some sense is a stakeholder. In the very explicitly legal sense, they both authorize and appropriate the money that NASA spends. The White House, the executive branch, is actually what kind of owns NASA. I mean, NASA is an executive branch agency. And to a large extent, the public cares about NASA. Now, arguably, they do so through the elected officials, but it's a little different because of how how we talk about NASA successes varies depending on the audience. You talk to Congress, it tends to be a little transactional. It's like, well, guess what, Alabama delegation, we're going to build a great big rocket in your district, and you should be happy about that. So give us some money. For the president, it's like we are bringing the nation's space program into international prominence and leading the world in various issues of, science and national security. For the public, depending on who you're talking to, it could be as simple as look at these really cool things we can discover when we go to space, or it could be this is a path for you to invest or be part of a future where you could make money in orbit. Those perspectives are all hugely divergent, but NASA somehow manages to bring them all together and remain a really positive brand for space science and space technology for the nation. That's a hard thing to do.
Definitely.
And there are a lot of folks at NASA trying their best to do that. These days, it's a tricky business, but we hope there'll be a return soon to some degree of normalcy where NASA can continue to spend money on things that are going to matter for the nation.
Definitely. No, I appreciate you going into detail with that, Professor Peck.
I know this is a hint of saying I'm going on too long, so I'll
No,
make
no.
my next one shorter. It's cool.
No, I truly appreciate
Okay,
it. I
you're
know
welcome.
as a child I went to the Kennedy Center
Oh, yeah.
in Florida, and that was, I think, one of the most amazing experiences that I've had so far in terms of my exploration of aerospace and engineering, and hearing this side of it just kind of opens up my mind, and I hope our viewers' minds as well, about what really goes on behind the scenes at an organization of that size.
It is a lot of people. So when I was there, it was about 18,000 people. It was an $18 billion agency. So that's, so what is that, $1 million per person? That's not what they get paid. But in terms of the ratio of things, that $1 million, most of it, 80% of that goes outside the agency to universities like Cornell, to companies, Lockheed Martin and others, to design and build that future. The part that stays within the walls of NASA typically is not directed toward building and designing things. And it's really common for people to think, I want to go get a job at NASA because I want to build a spacecraft. NASA basically never does that. It's always a prime contractor, again, like Boeing or Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or somebody. And the science that gets done is rarely actually done at NASA. It's often done at universities. Give you the example at Cornell. For years, we were the home of the Spirit and Opportunity rovers, right? The two Mars rovers they're still on Mars. Steve Squires was the principal investigator. He was in the astronomy department here. And we had a little mission operations center thing up in the top of the astronomy building. It's the kind of work that we can do as a university because it's unique. It's not merely a kind of administrative exercise. There's discovery that has to happen. And that's what universities are for. Anyway, with that model, keeping in mind that most of NASA's money doesn't stay at NASA, the small amount that does makes NASA dollars kind of precious. There are some expenditures internally, but most of it, like I said, goes outside. It's common then to look at NASA's budget, the 18 billion, now it's 20 plus $billion, and say, why are we spending all that money? We could be spending it on feeding the poor and housing the unhoused, and these are all fair questions and trades that we could be asking ourselves. at the same time, that's only less than 0.5% of the federal budget. During Apollo, it was about 7% of the federal budget. And of course, the federal budget was smaller then, so it's both sides, the numerator and denominator. But I think you have to ask yourself or we have to ask ourselves, how much do we want to invest in this kind of exploration and discovery? Do we want to invest pennies on the dollar? If so, we should double or triple NASA's budget. Right now, we're doing 0.5 penny on the dollar.
That really puts it into kind of puts it into scale for us here.
When you're at Kennedy Space Center, they don't really make that point. They don't say, please give us more money. And by the way, when you're there, you should totally buy all the swag at the gift shop, but none of that goes to NASA. You might think, I know, you might think that you're buying a sweatshirt with NASA on it, and that's going to be, $20 is going to go to the space program. That's not what happens. It doesn't go that way.
I feel a little worse about buying the little space shuttles now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you should enjoy your space shuttles. But NASA itself does not really make money off of its discoveries.
Okay.
For example, you would think with the thousands of innovations every year, and God knows how many tens, hundreds of thousands probably over the 60 plus years of NASA's existence, you would think there would be patents, licenses, all sorts of things that would make the agency money. If that had been the case, it would probably be self-sustaining by now. Yeah. That has never been the case. In fact, NASA gives away its intellectual property.
Okay.
Sometimes they give it away in the form of, any company can just read NASA reports and use it. Sometimes they actually hold little IP auctions, but that's pretty rare.
Okay.
Anyway, my point is that the money that the space program gets, if we think of NASA as the space program, is not as much as we might think. So you look at the tens of or 10-ish thousand people that are currently working at NASA and asking, why are they spending all this taxpayer money? It's going to companies, it's going to individuals, and it's not staying at the NASA centers.
Wow, that's very, I think, different from what the general public view is.
I'm here to pull back the curtain.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Professor Peck.
Okay, sure.
And now kind of transitioning from your work at NASA to what you do here at Cornell. I know myself as a student here, and all of your students are really, truly lucky to have you teaching us. You bring not only years of experience here, but years of experience outside of Cornell. And
I'll wait till the grades come out. They can decide about that. But go on.
Yeah. But so we truly appreciate the fact that you're able to kind of open up this whole new world to us and are willing to share your experiences with us. But if we dial in more to what you've done here at Cornell, could you speak to us a little bit about your role as an educator, your role as a researcher here, and even the projects you run like Alpha CubeSat?
Well, I try to bring those together. I think, first of all, what makes Cornell as an institution great, and many of the great universities in the world, and particularly the US, is we fuse research and education together. So you have people, and I guess I'm one of them, who do have an active research program. That research activity informs the teaching, it informs what we know about things that we can then share with students. When we make scientific or technical discoveries, those inform the teaching. Let's say, for example, if I want to tell people about how propulsion works on a rocket, I can speak from some experience and say, well, look, I know that this is the way it works at SpaceX, or I know it works this way in some old-fashioned Lockheed Martin rocket or something like this. I can talk about those things because I may have done research on them and I know rather a lot of the specifics. So to me, teaching is not entirely just about creating a good lesson plan. It's actually about making a connection with the students on the basis of some shared interest. So I really like teaching students that care about what they're learning. If this was just an institution where, give me my degree, I want to sit back and do the bare minimum, that would be one thing. But students like you and really everyone else that I've encountered here are very committed to their discipline. They really want to know this stuff, and they would like to participate actively in a career in the future. So that really helps kind of shape things for me. So when I conduct research here, I am often thinking about how I bring in students to the activity. And we do that a lot. So at Cornell, for the last 20 plus years, starting by the way with a CubeSat by Mark Campbell in the early 2000s, we've designed, built, and launched many spacecraft. And that's just in the engineering environment. So as engineers, we are interested in the technology of things. We're interested in how do we make it work. And our innovations, our creations, are ways to make things work better, or ways to do things you couldn't have done any other way. And that's very distinct from the scientific method, right? So an astronomer, again, Steve Squire's a great example, his goal is to discover, right? Interrogate nature, find out nature's secrets. and reveal them for the world. Engineers start not from the premise of I don't know the answer, but I really want this answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, we would be terrible scientists because our conclusions are already kind of built into our premises, right? We were kind of assuming, I really want this rocket to fly this way. And by gosh, I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah.
If a scientist took that approach, they'd be kicked out of the National Academy because that's not how the scientific method is supposed to work. So there's very different approaches to things. And when we bring students into research, for the most part, they understand that they want to create, and sure, some of them are happy to discover. But when we teach these things, the point that I try to get across in classes is not so much you got to memorize these things, which you kind of have to, but you also have to know why these things are the way they are. So engaging a student in research opens up that why, I think, in an important way. So you mentioned the Alpha CubeSat.
Yes.
For people who maybe not have heard this story, a CubeSat is a small spacecraft. It's based on the idea of a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter cube, so hence CubeSat. So not all cubes are CubeSats, and not all things that are small are CubeSats, but the virtue of a CubeSat is that it's the concept is an open source design. So you can go online, buy parts, the standard is just out there for everybody, and you can build them as 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 or 10 by 30 or maybe 20 by 30, and the more units of CubeSat you have, they're called U's. So a 2U CubeSat would be 20 by 10 by 10. Anyway, this standard design eliminates a lot of the drudgery in coming up with an engineering solution, and you can focus on what makes it innovative. So the reason I'm here, honestly, is innovation. I would like to create new things. I would like to innovate new things. I would work with people to do that. CubeSats democratize that problem really effectively. Rather than spending years designing the basic structure or communication system or power system for a spacecraft, I can buy one for not that much money and then really focus on the innovation we care about. Alpha as a spacecraft is designed to deploy a sail. Now, you might be thinking of sails for a lake or an ocean, a lake right over there, I can see it.
Yeah.
And those are blown around by wind, the physical wind on the surface of the Earth. The sail we are building is not a sail that captures the wind, it captures light, and specifically laser light. Now, light does carry momentum with it. It's a weird quantum mechanical effect, but when we say the sun is beating down on us, that is literally true. There are literally little photons carrying momentum and whacking us in the head with them. We don't feel it in that way, but a large enough object, especially when it's light enough, would not only feel that pressure, but also experience enough acceleration for it to be useful and meaningful. Now, a solar sail would use sunlight for that purpose. And solar sails could develop high speeds, although they're just so ungainly and complicated, they haven't really shown a lot of promise, to be honest with you. A laser sail is a whole other deal. A solar sail in space experiences maybe 1,300 watts per square meter of surface area. So 1,300 watts of photons, it produces pico-newtons, really small amount of force. But if I could just have a more intense sun, I could do better. And clearly that's what a laser would be. So I could shine, not just kilowatts, but maybe gigawatts on a sail. That concept, shining gigawatts of power on a sail and getting it to accelerate, is the basis for what's called the Breakthrough Starshot project.
Okay.
That project is probably defunct now, but for a long time anyway, a number of us at Cornell were on the advisory council for that. And the idea was, could we make a really small spacecraft, like literally the size I'm holding up in my fingers here, and weighs only a couple of grams, but attach it to a sail, maybe half the size of this room, and get it to be pushed by a laser fired from the ground. Sounds a little nutty, and there's a lot of difficult technology problems there, but more or less it could work.
Okay.
If you could get it to work, that sail would travel at about 20% the speed of light, which is incredibly fast. The fastest spacecraft we've ever built goes maybe tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. You would be talking about something 1 million times faster than that. So an exciting prospect, because with that device you could probably reach the nearest star in human lifetime.
Yeah.
That would open up not only the solar system, but the galaxy in a way that hasn't been done before. I would say it's probably like 100 years ago, people thinking about sending rockets from the Earth to the moon, sort of Jules Verne style stuff. It looked crazy then. This looks crazy now. But again, Jules Verne kind of got it right. You could roughly do that. I think we can roughly do this too. So the Alpha spacecraft is a precursor for that.
Okay.
Alpha is going to deploy a sail, which means kind of unfurl and pop out a sail.
Yeah.
The CubeSat itself just enters the orbit of enters back into Earth's atmosphere. We don't care about it anymore. The sail itself carries 4 of those little tiny spacecraft, these little 2-gram spacecraft. As it travels, it experiences sunlight. We were hoping we could find a partner in the government that was going to shine a laser on it. That has not happened yet, probably won't happen. But in any case, we have shown a lot of the key features of developing a laser sail that could propel a really small spacecraft. So that's what Alpha is. Back to 10 minutes ago, what we were talking about, students and research at Cornell. This is new stuff. You can't just go to Walmart and buy one of these.
Definitely.
So you have to invent it. And so we invented lots of things. We invented how to control the spin and the orientation of the spacecraft. We invented the sail deployment. We invented how the chipsats, they're called, work. We invented all that stuff. And it's also out there for free. We have a GitHub repository. People can just get it and build it themselves if they want to, because that's what we do at a university. It's for the public benefit, what we do. So the Alpha spacecraft has educated, I will say, 10 years worth of students being exposed to different technical problems. And in the recent past, some of them even went to the launch, which happened a couple weeks ago. We expect that thing will be deployed from the space station in November. If that goes well, we will have data from it around that time. And that'll be the first data from a laser sail in space using these little tiny chips. So that success, that research success, is in some respects just icing on the cake. Because honestly, it's been the decades of students, or a decade of students that have been contributing to it, that really is the success, I think, of that project. So now that it's been delivered to the launch site, it's actually going up to the space station, ready to be deployed. We are almost done with regard to what I really care about, which is bringing students into this STEM experience and giving them exposure to a problem that, you know, will be the first of many, I hope, that'll help change the world.
That's amazing, Professor Peck, and congratulations to yourself and the entire team at Alpha CubeSat.
Yeah, we're really pleased it got to that point.
It's amazing to hear about the fact that at universities here and across the nation, this innovation, this research, all this engineering is really going on, and students themselves have the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to this and actually help propel the future of STEM forward.
Yeah, I think we're lucky to live in this country at this time when you can fly your senior project. It's not true most other countries, and it's not even true everywhere here. So we are fortunate. We have to remember how fortunate we are to be in a place like Cornell.
Definitely. And I think through this, you definitely touched on the entire process of really from kind of putting it together in your mind to putting it into orbit. And that is something not a lot of us really have much insight on, if I'm being completely honest, whether it's engineering students even, or other STEM majors. We don't really see the behind the scenes work of it. We see our friends going into lab every week and we see them putting in the work, but a lot of us
they come out all tired.
And we wonder why they're tired instead of asking what they've been up to. And to hear about this again, it's super valuable to us, and it really helps us here at Ursa Majors understand where the future is heading. So on that note, where do you see the future going, whether it's with new startups, new programs opening up at universities? Where's the future of STEM, and more specifically, where's the future of engineering going, according to you?
Well, as a very broad topic, it's quite hard to say. One of the complications these days is artificial intelligence and machine learning and other such things. AI or other forms of computation that can take the place of some basic human activity makes a lot of people question why we want people engaged in really any pursuit. If you can get ChatGPT to write your resume for you, write an application for a job, you get to write articles for the newspaper, you get it to write code for you, design a spacecraft, what's the point? And I think the point remains, there's a degree of creativity that only humans are capable of. I don't know if you've ever tried asking an AI, come up with something no one's ever thought of before. It's a really interesting exercise to do that. At the moment, at least, a lot of AI that tries to be creative, generative AI, it's not very successful. I tried asking ChatGPT to write some song lyrics at one point, and it gave me this interesting stuff, kind of made sense, but for a few weird features. And it turned out that it was trying to make a joke, apparently. and it said, it's off the wall.
Uh-huh.
But it made no sense to a human the way that would normally make sense. I think analogously, in designing an engineering system, there's a degree of aspiration, a kind of personal connection to what we want to have happen that drives forward the long hours in the lab, the creativity of engineers, in a way that I don't yet see happening in AI. But what I'm getting at is, what will STEM education look like when AI is fully, successfully embedded into the experience? What are we really educating people to do?
Yeah.
In the classes you've had and the classes I continue to teach, I think it's important to show people the basics, basic equations, get them to run computer models, get them to understand how it all fits together. Is that always necessary? Like right now, my kids actually ask me in elementary school, why can't I just use a calculator? Why do I have to know how to do long division? A fair question.
Yeah.
And it's a very hard one to answer. I do think that the future is one in which AI and engineering will be working hand in hand, but in a way that I'm not sure I have enough insight into to give you a good answer. What I'm concerned about is that we ascribe too much, give too much credit to AI right now, to again the Google AI or ChatGPT or any of the other models that are out there. Give it credit for being wise, and it really isn't. It's just a big curve fit, in my opinion. It really is. It's like you got God knows how many petabytes of data, and you found a common element, or you found the average, or you found a way to fit the request to the data, and there it is. Where does new information come from? I think that's always going to come from people. I say these things though, and I'm concerned about feeling like an old fart when I talk about this, but I don't think that it's ever going to be the case that you can remove the human from the engineering process. Because again, there's a degree of inspiration and aspiration that goes along with the STEM disciplines that we care about, that just doesn't yet motivate how an AI approaches problems. Maybe that will change too. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to see as a huge change. Maybe drilling in specifically to space, you mentioned startups. That's been true for 20, 30 years now, that businesses start up around space, and a lot of them are successful, not all of them. SpaceX is the obvious example. It was a startup, but you cannot call it a startup now. It's a massive organization. It has a stranglehold, I guess I could say, on the launch market. I'm not really against that, to be honest, because the prospects, especially of the Starship Super Heavy combination, that's going to be game changing. If we can launch something that costs as much to send to orbit as it does to mail it across the country, that not only democratizes space, it opens up whole new possibilities.
Yeah, definitely.
But it also radically changes what aerospace is about. We think of, when you take aerospace classes, I'm sorry to tell you, you're learning stuff that made sense probably 10, 20 years ago, maybe it still makes sense now. But coming up with lightweight materials, high reliability approaches to autonomy and software and all sorts of other things, those are all great, and there probably will always be a place for them. But if you can fix something or launch a replacement cheaper than spending all this effort designing out all possible failures, that's what you're going to do. So I expect that spacecraft will come to resemble automotive systems, I will say more likely within 10 years, maybe 5. We will start to take less seriously the degree of reliability that we ascribe to individual spacecraft. Instead, expect that a larger infrastructure will provide that reliability for us. You expect to own a car for 10 years, I'm going to guess. I don't know. But in that 10 years, you don't expect it not to have to go to the shop. You'll have to take it to the dealership or your corner mechanic, or maybe you work on it yourself. I think that's what spacecraft are going to start to look like. You'll have to fix them yourself, or you hire someone to fix them. So there will be a type of business that will start up, which is something like the Patterson's Garage in downtown Ithaca, that will fix your spacecraft for you. So those don't exist right now because the manufacturers make them to government-driven specifications of very high reliability. But again, what needs to be reliable is the service they provide. You expect when you get your car back from the dealer, it's going to be fine for another few months or whatever. Same thing with a spacecraft. You don't expect it. You shouldn't expect it for the future to remain perfect. But you should expect the environment, the overall ecosystem, to provide continuous, reliable service in space, whether that's for GPS for public use, or whether it's supplying propellant to some distant spacecraft orbiting the moon. Whatever those purposes are, they're going to have to be reliable, but maybe not because we use exotic components and high reliability propulsion systems. It's going to be something else. So that's a huge shift, and what it means for us in learning about the STEM aspects of engineering is maybe we need to, start emphasizing in aerospace the more traditional ways in which materials and software and other things work, the way that we do for, let's say, automotive engineering. So automotive engineering is a topic that's taught at Cornell. Not as many courses as for space, but that's because space for the moment, and aerospace generally, including aircraft, is newer. We've solved a lot of the problems of cars. And sure, there's always innovations. Electric vehicles demand innovation, for example. But it's not like no one knows how to build a car. Where we are right now is we don't really yet exactly know how to build all spacecraft. But there will come a time, I'll say within the next 20 years, where teaching aerospace is going to feel like teaching how to build a car engine. It's a fine academic exercise, so you know how internal combustion works. But really, is that really the cutting edge? In my opinion, that's where universities can be successful. They take a problem to the point where it can be handed off to industry. And now the innovations happen at GM or Pratt & Whitney or some other place. They build engines, and they innovate in building engines. But the amount of academic research on the fundamentals of engines is kind of limited at the moment. And that will probably happen also for space systems. We're not quite there yet, but it's happening more and more. CubeSats are actually part of the reason. CubeSat has shown us how we can get an off-the-shelf spacecraft that just meets most of our needs. And you don't have to engineer every aspect of it. You focus on the payload, just like when you buy a car, you maybe focus on the trim package, or you focus on what you want, which is driving 140 miles an hour, or something like that. I mean, whatever you want. I'm not sure what you want. But anyway, you asked a hard question.
No, definitely.
That's the shortest answer I can give you. We'll see differences in how we learn and how we educate thanks to AI. And what we do specifically for space is going to be driven by this ecosystem that will radically change thanks to low launch costs and infrastructure in orbit.
Got it.
That's my prediction. Ask me another 10 years. We'll see how far we got.
No, I appreciate that, Professor Peck, and kind of gives us a good insight from your point of view as well. And branching off of that question, coming to the focus of Ursa Majors Group really, which is to inspire the next generation of STEM majors, inspire the next generation of leaders in STEM, whether it's in academia like yourself or in the industry. What piece of advice would you give them when it comes to their own contribution to the future of STEM or the future of engineering or the future of space even?
I'm going to say be fearless, and that's very hard. Everyone's afraid of something. We're all afraid of this, that, and the other. Some are at the very personal level, some are kind of rational fears, but if you're fearless in your pursuit of knowledge, what that means to me is you don't limit yourself saying, oh, I don't really do electronics, I don't really understand linear algebra, I'm not very good at fluid mechanics. Putting yourself in a box like that or somehow excluding yourself from that knowledge really does yourself a disservice. You do yourself a disservice. Really, I think the most successful engineers I know are what you could call polymaths. They really understand a wide range of disciplines. Steve Squires, I will pick up again. He's one of my favorite scientists. He also understands technology really well. It's thanks to decades of working with JPL and other organizations that build spacecraft, or at least cause them to be built. Anyway, that experience makes him effective, and I think gives him the confidence to then kind of reach out and branch out and accomplish great things. As an engineer, again, a lot of the most successful students I have encountered are the ones that are willing to take on electronics tasks, software tasks, mechanical tasks. They're at home with a welder as they are with a keyboard. And I think that that's what makes a successful engineer in the modern era, or at least the people that I want to work with. But that said, you got to be really good at something. You can't be good at everything. I just think that being a little fearless, encountering a problem and not just backing away because it feels unfamiliar. I think that leads to a lot of success. But it's hard to develop that. I mean, you just have to convince yourself. You just have to kind of go for it. When I took the job at NASA, I have to tell you, I was really intimidated. You should expect that would be true, right? So I got this call from the guy who preceded me and said, look, I really envy you. This is a great opportunity. I just remember the first day, I remember the sun rising over DC and thinking, this is going to be the greatest day of my life. And I remember the first day I was sitting in my office with my head in my hands saying, what the hell have I got myself into here? How am I possibly going to, achieve all the goals I would want, or not look like a fraud and stuff like this? Again, you just have to really force yourself into it and encounter the unknown and the unfamiliar
Yeah.
with some courage. You're not going to know everything. Pretending that you do does not help.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the worst things you can do as an engineer is to pretend you know something you don't. So I think that's maybe the one single piece of advice. It's something that I also take seriously at a personal level, because often I find myself backing away from things I should be doing, and I just have to not do that. I have to force myself into it. So I hope that other folks take that advice.
No, I definitely,
maybe it
Professor
brings
Peck.
them.
I think that definitely speaks to me as a student as well, and I'm sure it speaks to a lot of our listeners really, who kind of get these opportunities and they go into them and they really just question themselves. They say, am I supposed to be here? And that's a question that I know you could speak to, whether it's imposter syndrome or just, the fear of taking that first step forward. But definitely something that we see a lot in students, and hearing that that's something that's shared with someone at your level and something that you were really able to get past, I think it really just kind of inspires and empowers our students as well here. And then bridging off of that, kind of getting more into what you recommend our students do. So when they're starting out, they're kind of middle schoolers, they're really just starting to get that exposure to STEM. They're starting to see movies, whether it's science fiction like you mentioned, and these thoughts are coming to their mind. They're like, oh, I want to go into space, or I want to build airplanes. And with the limited resources they have and the age they're at, what would you recommend they do? How would you recommend they kind of work on entering that field at such a young age?
That's a great question, because I don't think there are a lot of, let's say, 7th or 8th graders that I know who come ready-made with all the skills that an engineer would need to have. So you're talking about people who have some instinct for the problems they would like to be involved with and maybe help solve someday, but not necessarily really any of the skills. Some of those skills are easier to get than others. For example, software or coding, right? It doesn't take too much to sit down at a keyboard and just try stuff out and just play with software coding. But this is a great example of maybe a larger point, which is these are all tools that are available to all of us. For the moment, and probably for the foreseeable future, education is an equalizer. It gives people an opportunity, and to squander that by just like not paying attention or by thinking it doesn't apply to you is one of the worst mistakes you could make. If I've had success over the years in an education context, it's in taking really seriously the stuff that's happening in class and just doing my best to remember it. Really feeling that someday I'm going to need to use this, so I better figure out what this is all about. Not because I'm looking for an A, not because I'm afraid that the teacher will be mad at me, not because my parents will get upset if I come home with bad grades. It's not that. It's I want to be the guy who knows this stuff. So I want to own that. So that sense of ownership is key. For someone that's young, these kind of self-reflective moments are really hard to come by. You're barely able to kind of put your clothes on in the morning, let alone think deeply about your future and reflect. But what I'm suggesting is to put yourself in situations where you have to use some tools. So software is one of those tools. It's relatively low bar to entry. You can get your hands on a computer somehow. You can maybe make progress. Another one is the mechanical side of things. So just basic skills, including carpentry or gluing stuff together. It seems like I'm talking down what a 7th grader is capable of. I know they're capable of a lot, but just knowing how basic tools work, getting familiar with the mechanical universe, using wood and nails and screws is a great start. In fact, most kids I know who just like to build things, if it's building a tree house or building a little table for your garage or putting shelves together when your parents need a shelf for their house, this is a great habit to be in. Getting more and more familiar with these things. I mean, you start to know what it means to have a 632 screw, right? Or what it means to have a socket on a socket wrench, and what these things are all for. Which direction you turn things, when you go lefty loosey, righty tighty. All that stuff seems really elementary maybe to someone like you, but just getting more familiar with it, I think what that does is it reminds folks that this is for you too. Whatever your background, you can do this, and you are permitted to. In fact, you shouldn't even think of permission. One thing I did when I was a kid, I'm not sure I'm proud of this or not, but whenever something would break in the house, I would grab it and just take it to the basement and just take it apart and see what's going on there. I usually couldn't put it back together. It was already broken, so it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
I found that to be a really great just exercise. It was just fun to figure out what's inside things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily curiosity that I'm pointing out, but in the process of doing that, I developed skills like how do you get tools to work and do the thing you want? If you have to take something apart and put it back together, you know, how do you do that? How do you keep track of the parts? What's a good process for that?
Yeah.
So maturing your own basic skills, I think, is a great start. And I think a seventh grader might be surprised if after a couple of years of doing that kind of thing, now they're in high school and they have an opportunity to join a robotics team or something else like that, they'd be surprised how far those really basic skills will take them. So I think it's a relatively small step to get familiar with basic computer stuff and basic mechanical stuff. And the other really subtle things like propulsion or RF communications or whatever, that'll come, but you have to build the foundation.
Definitely.
And you have to want to own it. You have to want it. If you don't want it, what do you do? Right?
Exactly.
Just, go take another job.
And I think that really kind of speaks to our goal here at Ursa Major as well, about pushing the importance of education. Like you said, education's there. You have to want it. You have to go take it when you're given the opportunity to go get it. And I'm actually really glad you mentioned that. It just kind of, for us here, it ties everything together and helps us move our own mission forward as well. And we appreciate you taking part in that. So from our end here, Professor Peck, we're going to go into a quick set of rapid fire questions.
All right.
But before I get into that, I just want to take a moment. I want to thank you for joining us here today. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to our students and our team here at the Ursa Majors Group. And we hope to continue these conversations with you and kind of keep you in the loop as we grow as an organization, and hopefully give you inspiring stories of our own students at some point and kind of show you where you helped take them. But again, just thank you for coming on this podcast with us, and really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be part of it.
Thank you. So now we'll get into quick rapid fire questions. 3 questions, not too much thought behind them. But the first one, what's your favorite spacecraft that's been out there? Whether it's real, fake, science fiction, anything.
Oh, I didn't know if it could be science fiction. Well, okay. If it's science fiction, I'm going to have to say Serenity.
Okay.
But if it's a real spacecraft, I will say the JC Sat-3 spacecraft.
Okay.
I've never heard of it. It's a communication spacecraft made for a Japanese company. It was the first spacecraft that I ever worked on as a mission operations guy. So I have a particular affinity for that one.
That's amazing. Next question. One piece of space tech that you wish more people understood?
Probably the heat shields that provide the ability for a spacecraft to enter. Depending how small or large they are, they behave very differently. You could probably get a little tiny, spacecraft this big to enter the atmosphere without a heat shield.
Okay.
But something really large, the size of a human capsule or even larger, at the moment is not physically possible. We can't enter 20,000 kilograms worth of stuff onto Mars. We just don't have the technology. So understanding that that is a huge challenge, but also it can work really well depending on scale, that'd be worth knowing.
Perfect, thank you. And then last question, if you couldn't work in space, what would you be doing for a profession, or even apart from your profession as a hobby as well?
Yeah, I like farming and gardening. In fact, just a little while ago, my wife and I both bought a small chunk of land across the lake there, and we've put some apple trees on it, and so be an apple farmer.
That is amazing, Professor Peck. Well, from here at Ursa Majors, that's all we have for you today. Thank you again for being on the podcast with us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and we hope to stay in touch with you.
Thanks, Rushil.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Ursa Sparx, the Ursa Majors Group podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations with leaders in STEM. And as always, keep exploring.